5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And this is the official third episode of the IFAST podcast.
Here we are. And we're on iTunes now.
What? Yeah, how about that? That's exciting.
Killing the game.
We're grown up.
I know.
This is our grown up moment.
And we have our own mics too.
Yes, we have new equipment. This is also very exciting. So this is almost like a real radio show or whatever.
I know.
This is kind of getting kind of
It's like the next Bob and Tom.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, you're right.
I wouldn't go that far. But you remember the really early episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast on YouTube and how like he had that sort of weird studio kind of thing going on, and it was like in a little dark room. So we don't
Look how far
have that.
he's come, man.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably still be in the purple room at our 1,000th.
That's true.
Podcast, but
1,000 podcasts, that would be impressive.
Well, I think we could do it. We could do it. It's only 3 years, right? 3 years of this.
Once a week?
Yeah. Well,
to
no.
2,000,
that's probably, yeah, you're probably right. I was thinking like...
It's like 20 years.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not retiring anytime soon, so I don't anticipate...
My wife is very understanding of that fact. Like, I'm never going to shut it down totally.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine not doing something.
I would go crazy.
Yes, exactly right. I have to have meaningful work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, for sure.
Speaking of which, okay, so we initiated this thing. So we talked about the startup. We talked about bringing in our first interns.
Mm-hmm.
And then you brought up a really good point as to where we go next in this discussion.
Yes.
That will be useful for others.
Well, I think talking about the hiring process, and obviously there's no right or wrong way to hire somebody, but I do think over 11 years and having an assortment of both interns and employees, we've learned some things that work really well and maybe some things that don't work as well. So I think that would be helpful.
Well, so think about an evolution of culture.
Yes.
I think that if you have a high turnover rate, it would be very, very difficult
Yes.
to maintain that level of culture. And so you and I decided, I mean, we were sitting at my dining room table in the old house, and it was like, how do we really want this thing to go? And we sort of created this mental picture, if you will, at that point, as to what it was going to be, what we were going to do. And we didn't follow through on everything that we said at that point in time, but I think that we were in agreement that there was just a certain way that everything was going to go, within the structure of the facility, and then how we were going to interact with people. And then it was just a matter of execution on our part.
Yes.
And then when it was time for us to not open the doors at 6 a.m. and close them at 7 p.m.
Yes.
Then it was a matter of, okay, who do we get to come in?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the starting point. Like, people want to talk about best practices for hiring and all this stuff, and that's great. But like, before you have that, I think it's just like writing a training program. Before you write the program, you got to have a vision for what you want the program to be or the outcome. And I think that's really important. You have to get clear on what kind of people do you want working in your business. And I think the three things that we've consistently said are, we need people that are curious, right? They have to ask questions. They have to want to know more. And everybody's got a different approach to this, but they've got to be curious. They've got to be hardworking. You and I are both pretty hard workers, I would like to think, even though we don't have to beat our chest and talk about it all the time. But you have to have a work ethic.
Right.
And
absolutely.
The third piece, which we've alluded to a couple times now, you got to have some personality. Right. Not everybody's got to be a Jerry Seinfeld level stand-up comedian. Right. But you got to have some personality. You got to be able to interact with people and with a broad swath of people. Right. Because we've got everything from 10 and 12 to 80 years old walking through the doors every day.
Exactly. Yeah, if you don't have a personality in that respect, you're going to be struggling from day one, because this is all about interaction. And that is, when we talk about whether it be a session in the Purple Room or a training session in the gym, we refer to it as an interaction. Right? Yeah. It's like, we can call it a training session, or we can call it a rehab appointment, or whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, we are interactors. We don't fix things. We interact with people to achieve the desired outcome or result. And so if that is the case, then you have to be able to interact with whomever that you're working with.
Yes. And one of the best ways, I think, or one of the best things that we learned early on was, it takes a little while to learn what we do here, right? Like
Right.
we can't teach somebody in a weekend or in a week. You can't go get a piece of paper cert and know how to train at IFAST. So I think one thing that we did that made us successful early on was we always attempted to hire somebody directly through the internship process.
Right.
And it did two things for us. Number one, it allowed us to get this 12 to 16 week education with the person, which is obviously important. We want to make sure that they have the skills necessary to operate, but perhaps more importantly, that cultural piece.
Right.
After 12 to 16 weeks, you got a pretty good reading on who somebody is, the way they're going to act, how they deal with adversity. There's just a lot of benefits to having somebody around for an extended period before you actually hire them.
Right. It's sort of like, well, just if you're going to go buy a pair of pants, you put them on first.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, the reality is,
Right.
it's like you got to try them on. You test drive your car.
Yes.
And so this is a way for us to. I think there's a couple of benefits. So we go back to the benefits of the internship program. It's like every time we teach, we get better.
Yeah.
Every time we teach, we improve everything that we do. But it also allows the intern to understand what our culture is, what our system is,
Right.
how we would interact, and then that designs the fit. So if they fit into, not everybody could get hired. So, and there's been interns that fit really, really well. We just
Yeah.
don't have a place for them.
Absolutely.
You know, but when we do have an opening, that's the first place you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
By a long shot. So let's talk through an example of somebody that has worked here that literally came through every stage of the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a couple examples on board right now, right?
Right,
I mean, I
right.
immediately think Eric.
Yep.
You know, I immediately think Nikki. I
Yeah.
think Tall Dave.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. So
because those three followed that process.
Right. Well, let me back up just a little bit. So Jay's not here anymore, but
Mhm.
Jay was with us for what, 8 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
But Jay started even deeper as a client.
Yeah.
And then an intern.
Yeah.
And so talk about that process, because I think you worked with him
Mm-hmm.
a heck of a lot more than I did in that early phase.
And if you go back to it, we've had a couple people. So when you mentioned this, I was like, that's Lance.
Yep.
That's Jay. That's Zach Moore.
Zach Moore.
You know, all of them.
Exactly.
So I think that's what's interesting is you take people, and Lance was at least, I think, in the exercise science field.
Right.
But Jay was a master's in music.
Right.
Zach
and
was a master's in econ.
Yeah. So you got an economics major, a philosophy major who's an accomplished musician.
Yeah.
And Lance.
Yeah. But it's just so interesting because you forge these relationships. But I mean, I think that speaks something to what we're doing.
Right.
If you can take somebody and maybe they're just unhappy or unfulfilled doing what they are, but to think that they have spun this into a career, like that's really powerful.
Yeah, well, they see the process, and I think the process becomes fascinating because they come in with a personal goal, whether it be fitness or rehabilitative or something along those lines. Like they all came in with something, and then they sort of fall in love with the process, and then they say, "Wow, this is really interesting. Now I want to be a part of that." And then how do I become a part of that? And then that feeds them into the internship program.
Yeah, and that's what's fun too. Is again, now it comes back to I know how to do these things. But it's a totally different ballgame when you got to start coaching people, right? So it's like these people are incredibly savvy because they're well educated, right? They've been through the process themselves. But anytime you have to flip that, and now you have to teach somebody else what you know, it's just such a different level of understanding and a depth of understanding that you can't fathom until you have to do it live.
Right. But it is the setup. And then, like I said, then you identify those people that you know what? If I had to hire somebody today, you have those thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I had to hire somebody today, I would hire that person.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know, and so that we're up to speed now. Then with the current staffing.
Yeah.
All three. Actually 4 now with Kevin. So Kevin came through as a client.
Yes.
That's true. He didn't have the internship experience, but he did get some experience elsewhere. But he did start within the culture, and right away, I mean, we knew when we had the opening, and it was like this perfect storm of serendipity, where we needed somebody very, very specific, and then Kevin comes in with these specific skills, and it's just like then we just marry the process.
And I think the fun thing about that is, so the first priority or the first goal is always to pick somebody from the internship program, right?
Right.
But when you don't have somebody that fits those specific skill sets, or they don't match the demographic, because in Kevin's case, we wanted a soccer player.
Right.
We wanted somebody with strength and conditioning experience that was very comfortable being around soccer players. Well, he played soccer his whole life.
Right.
But the thing that separated Kevin from the other people that we might have considered was the fact that, I mean, he sought out education on his own.
Right.
He'd been involved with IFAST. He bought Complete Coach.
Right.
You know, like, I knew he was educating himself and starting to think like we do.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, this is a guy that I immediately have on my radar.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I think those types of people, that's the goal, right? You always want people that you want to bring in like-minded people.
Right.
And again, not to become this like homogenous kind of, I don't know the word I'm looking for here. You don't want like everybody thinking the exact same thing, but you want this shared experience
Right.
that then you can use your own creativity with it.
Well, I think philosophically, and I've said this before in multiple situations, I think philosophically everybody has to be on the same page.
Yes.
But again, some people are better at certain things. There's no question about that. But we have a common philosophy, and that's what drives the culture,
Yeah.
right? And so I think so. What Kevin was doing, if you think about this, is that while he was outside of IFAST at the time, he was doing his IFAST internship because from a cultural standpoint, from an instructional standpoint, the stuff that you're promoting has been evolved out of this.
Right.
The stuff that we put on IFAST has evolved out of this.
Yeah.
So it is sort of like doing the IFAST internship without the day-to-day reps, but from an informational standpoint and a philosophical standpoint, I think that Kevin, I mean, obviously he hit. I mean, you can just tell he hits the ground running and he's ready to go. Right. Because he was with us from the get-go, and then like the prior experience as the clientele. So we had a special case in Nikki, I think.
Yes.
I think that was really unusual.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
So Nikki is the first person that we've ever hired straight out of the internship, like finished the internship and moved directly into a coaching role, essentially. Right. So let me give you a couple examples. So Dave was here, worked a couple other places. He was working at NIFS, you know, and we knew culturally he's a great fit, checked all the boxes, good personality, always getting better. So we knew he was a good fit. Eric, same thing, interned here, then he went and interned with Texas Tech basketball, interned with IU basketball, then basically did another internship with me last summer at the barn before we hired him. Right. So, you know, they've had these other experiences, but yeah, Nikki was interesting in the fact that she finished her internship and we just knew culturally she was going to be a good fit for us. And like, look, I think at some point you have to look at your team, and if everybody... We just did that DISC analysis, you know, and if a DISC analysis, if you've never done one, is basically everybody's got these different personality traits and that's all fine and dandy. But if everybody's in one area or one quadrant, you know, like you're maybe missing something as far as the team dynamic. So it was nice to have Nikki, who is very vivacious, very outgoing. She, you know, a lot of us are down here and she's more like in the middle or up on the high end of like the energetic and outgoing and extroverted. So she's been really fun because she's got just this different energy about her that she brings to the gym that, you know, you and I are a little bit more cerebral. We're not going to bring that.
And you think about the different categories of clientele that we do have coming in, from the semi-private to athletic development and to the Athletica groups, and there's a certain personality type that fits more strongly into each one of those. And it's like, okay, once again, we had a gap, and then literally we have this person that walks in and demonstrates the evolution through the internship process, and it's like she was ready to step into a very specific role at a very specific time. So again, very serendipitous, but same process.
Well, and the cool thing that I think was a side effect of all that was, if you looked at how we had the gym set up before we had her, it was like we had semi-private, and we have our Athletica boot camps, and we have our AD, and we kind of had coaches like mishmashing across all of them. And so what it actually allowed us to do was streamline. So now we have Eric doing strictly semi-private, we have Nikki doing more of the group class-based stuff, and her personality is perfect for that. Exactly. Right? Exactly. So if you think about the age groups and demographics, she does our athletic development classes, which are our 10 to 13-year-olds. Right. They don't need like like super cerebral, in-depth coaching. They just need to learn how to move better. They need structure.
Right.
They need some positive engagement.
Foundational
movement. Right? The stuff they're not getting
Absolutely.
in gym. Absolutely. And then at boot camp, that's a higher energy class too. It's
Absolutely.
You're custom tailoring things a little bit. We don't do anything cookie cutter.
Yeah.
But they don't. That person doesn't want to be like micromanaged and like, you need to externally rotate that foot 2 degrees to make that squat look better. They don't want that.
Right. And then you see the growth of that side of the business as well, which has been kind of cool, because I was over there the other night and it's like, wow, this is really taking off now.
Yeah.
And then she, as far as a representative of us, that's a unique factor too. We've never had, and not to single her out, but we've never had a female coach before.
Yeah. We've had interns.
We've had female interns, but never a female coach as an employee. So that's been a really interesting interaction. And while this has been a boys' club, she fits in really, really well.
It's great.
And so I think that's a big deal for us as from a growth standpoint.
Agreed.
That it and I don't want to use the word soft because she's female, but it has given us another perspective in every meeting, in every interaction, in how we teach and how we coach. It's just made everybody. I think it makes it really better.
I agree, and I think one of the things that we all tend to have happen as we age and as we evolve is we forget what like the starting point is, right?
Right.
I don't remember much about being 22 anymore, so it helps to go back and just think about, okay, this is where she's starting from.
Yeah.
This is her base, this is her foundation, and rebuilding that. And the great thing is so many of these young people that come through here now, they feel overwhelmed or they feel intimidated. I'm like, man, don't, because you're going to be so far ahead. Like I always joke around, they leave their internship and they're writing a better program than I did up until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
Just because the knowledge has evolved so fast.
Right. Yeah. There's an element. And you can see it in Nikki that there's an element of confidence that is now present that wasn't as an intern.
Yes.
Like just in the I don't know how many months has she been?
August. Is that right?
So
3, yeah.
So 3 months as an employee, and you already see the difference.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely. She's got a little bit of swagger. She's got some style to her coaching now, where before I think as an intern you're always kind of looking over your shoulder like, is this okay? Is this okay?
Right.
Whereas now it's like she sort of just attacks the process, and that's really, really cool to see.
Well, and I think there's also this element too of if you or I are ever in the gym, they assume that we're just like judging them the whole time, right? Like, dude, I'm just trying to work out, like
exactly.
Yeah.
So I tell every Padawan that comes in here near the end of their internship, it's like your confidence level is going to increase dramatically because I will no longer be in the room and it will be on you.
Yeah.
And while there's that initial transition of independence, they start to recognize that, oh, I do understand this. I do make good decisions, and then you just let them know that, hey, I screw up every day too. So again, it's all part of the process. But again, the fact that we've created the culture and then found those people to fit via other means, whether it be as clients or as interns, infinitely. I think everybody should be doing it.
Yes.
For multiple reasons, not for the. Again, I always caution people. It's like, don't bring in an intern for free labor. Bring them in with purpose to one, make another person better, to help somebody else get somewhere, and then in return, you will always get better yourself because of the teaching element.
Well, and one thing that we haven't really talked about, but I think is important to note is if you are a business owner and you're getting into this, just realize that the hiring, like the whole process of hiring is a learned skill as well, right? It's like training. Training is always the perfect analogy, but like your first program isn't perfect.
Yeah.
Your first hire isn't going to get perfect.
Right.
Like I think the more you do it, the more you understand like the skills that you're looking for, the traits that you're looking for. So it's just something that as your gym evolves, as you have a better understanding of the traits that you need in your coaches and your staff, you get better at hiring.
Well, of course, it's just the reason. It's just like getting to know your significant other in the early stages of a relationship. When you first start a business, you have this perception of what it should be, but then it evolves, and then you start to actually understand your own culture
Right.
a little bit better. And
Right.
so by doing that, then you understand, like, oh, I need a person that can do this, this, and this. And it's like that's what you establish during the interview process. Now, there's always that element of unknowns. Right. You're going to make mistakes. We've hired people that didn't fit, and they're no longer here. Right. But and it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that they're just not the right person to fit this culture.
Yeah.
Somewhere else they do fit the culture. It's just like when you're creating a product, writing a blog, writing a book. You're writing it for a specific audience, and the thing they always use is if you go to Amazon and you look up Catcher in the Rye, which is like one of the most famous books ever, it's got about 50% bad reviews.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's like, but and everybody said, well, it's either like the greatest book of all time or it's like the worst book of all time. Well, the people that say it's the worst book of all time, it wasn't written for them.
Right.
It wasn't written for them.
Right.
And so when you hire an employee, there's nothing wrong with somebody that okay, so you made a misjudgment, you brought them in, they don't fit the culture for whatever reason it might be. Cut them loose. Give them an opportunity to go somewhere else where they do fit in, rather than saying, oh, I just hate the fact that I have to go let someone go. They're fired.
Right.
Let's be honest. They're just fired. And again, that's not a bad thing. It gives them an opportunity. It's just like when technology comes in and replaces people, and people say, oh, well, we've lost jobs. Okay, we don't light lamps on the streets anymore, right? As soon as they put the electric lights, the guy that used to go down the street every night and light the lamps downtown lost his job. Well, nobody's complaining about that stuff anymore.
Right.
So the reality is like some people just don't fit. You make a mistake, and so when it comes down to it, you say, does this person fit the culture? Do they have the personality? And then you just gotta say, okay, let's do it. And then if they don't, fire them.
Yes.
Right? And it's not about being mean. It's not about being nasty. It's literally about saying, this is the wrong opportunity for you.
Yeah.
You don't fit here. You're eventually going to be very unhappy.
Yeah.
And so you need to go somewhere where you do fit in. I think people
chances are they're already
that.
unhappy.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's like, but everybody wants to turn these situations into a negative. It's like being in a bad relationship too long. It's like as soon as the relationship's over, both people go, oh,
yes,
thank goodness this is over, because we were struggling. It's like, come on, man. It's just like any other relationship. Give them an opportunity to excel somewhere else, and then it lightens the load. And then that's the talk that you have. You say, look, man, it's like you're a good guy or a good person, but you just don't fit here, man.
Yes.
And I don't need to even tell you. We had a situation that came up not too long ago. It's like it just wasn't a good fit. It doesn't mean that person was a bad person. It's just you're just not the right person for this job.
Right. Well, and I think something I picked up from that $1 trillion coach book that you gifted me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, look, this is an inevitable part of business. You're going to have to let people go.
Absolutely.
Make sure that you let them go with dignity. Right. Like it's not. You suck at life, you're a bad person, like that's not the case. You don't fit here.
Right.
And I think that's hard. That's hard. But like you said as well, just like when you finish that bad relationship and the breakup is over and you kind of exhale, that's how it is in every business too, right? Like you rarely, if ever, feel worse after you fire somebody. You feel bad because look, now they're in a different position and they have to find a new job. But ultimately, it's the best thing for both of you.
Absolutely.
And so once you get past that initial phase, you're like, okay, hey, that was the best thing, and your culture actually improves.
Absolutely.
Like it's like
nobody wants to come into the cloudy day every day.
Right.
You have that one and play this the Eeyore of the group. Like, oh, another bad day.
Right.
And so it just when it's a bad fit, it's a bad fit. And then I would suggest that you act quickly.
Yes.
You have to act quickly, and you say, is this person a long-term solution for our cultural environment? And then if it's a no, guess what? It's time to move forward and do something about it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. That's good. I think this was useful.
I mean, if I was a business owner, I would have loved to have heard some of this stuff. Because
exactly.
You don't just walk into the business world, especially as fitness trainers, coaches, whatever we're calling ourselves.
Yeah.
we walk in with a specific skill set out there on a gym floor.
Right.
And so these are all things we have to learn. So
yeah, and again, it's like, as a business owner, it's like it's always so uncomfortable. But the reality is like that discomfort is not the fact that you got to let somebody go. The discomfort is the fact that they just didn't fit in the first place.
Yeah.
And then once that's taken care of, it's like everybody's happy. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun.
This was good.
So podcast number 3 in the bank. Podcast number 4 next week.
Yeah.
You gonna be here?
We'll be here.
All right, ready. This will be fun. So we'll see you guys next week. Let us know if you have any questions.